salary guide. I think I should get everything done in about 20-25 minutes or so we'll see how we go. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rowan O'Grady. I'm the president of Hayes here in Canada. I've been with Hayes now for 22 years. I think it's 11 of those have been here in Toronto now. And I'm also joined on the call today by Rachel Finan. Rachel runs our HR recruitment practice here in Toronto, and Rachel's going to help me when we get to the question section if there's any questions that I can't answer or I'm scared to attempt to answer. So as I said, we'll have approximately 20-25 minutes to share the results of the survey, and then we've kept aside 10 minutes at the end for questions. And as Caitlin has said, just type your questions into the text box. Probably the best thing is type them in as we go along if you like, or you can wait until the end, and then we'll cover as many of them as possible. So for the uneducated, just a little bit about the survey before we start. As many of you know, we produce an annual salary guide. We have done for a number of years. Within the guide, we show typical salaries paid across a whole selection of industries and functional areas, and then we cross-reference them for level of experience and the type of company that the role may be found in. And the salaries are based on what we see every day in our work, in the jobs that we fill, the clients that we're dealing with, and the candidates that we meet. And I could safely say at this stage it's become a really invaluable reference tool for literally thousands of hiring managers. I think we had 4,000 requests for copies last year across the company, and we're really proud of the fact that it's a simple thing, it's easy to use, but it's broad in its scope. So if you want to receive a copy of the 2017 guide, you can go to hayes.ca, and it'll be pretty obvious how to request a copy from there. In addition to the actual salary element to the guide, we use the opportunity to survey our clients, and we ask them about things such as their own hiring plans, what are they planning on doing with salaries for the coming year, how do they feel about business activity for the coming year, and what they think about the economy. And in this year we've included in some instances up to 5 years of data, and you can kind of see the trend. And when you put all of that together, it really is a good summary of what's going on in the job market in Canada, and really that is what the main crux of the presentation today is about. The webinar today is covering the general market, so that it's the general job market for Canada. Obviously, we only recruit for qualified and skilled roles as opposed to blue collar or unskilled jobs, so it's just focused on that. But during this week, I believe tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, we're doing additional webinars for the accounting and finance sector, the IT sector, the construction sector, and separately for the property and real estate sector. So if you work in those industries, it's a good idea to log into those ones as well, I would say. This year, the survey was completed by 4,000 hiring managers. It's the most it's ever completed. HR managers, business leaders completed the survey. It covers 16 different industries or sectors, and it covers 20 functional areas or like departments within organizations. During the next 20 minutes, I'll kind of pull out some regional differences and variances as we go along for comparison's sake, and you can see who's doing the best and who's doing the worst. So I'll start out, as is traditional, kind of with the key findings first of all. Number one, it would appear that corporate Canada's confidence in the economy has stabilized and actually recovered to some extent compared to the previous year. Business activity forecasts have improved as well. They're back up to the same level they were at in 2014. Hiring and compensation, however, are not expected to increase in line with the business activity, at least yet. Recruitment, retention, and employee development efforts have to be targeted to align with the business goals. And finally, employers are relying on temporary contract workers to maintain productivity in their businesses, but most are probably not getting as much as they could from that resource. So we'll come back to that. Okay, so let's look at the overall market trends. So when we're looking at the salary guide results, I always kind of start out with this one, which is everybody's feelings about the economy in general and whether people think that it's going to get stronger, weaker, or stay the same. So the graph shows employers' economic outlook over the last 4 years, and you can see there's a lot of change on there. The dark blue line is the percentage or proportion of people who thought that the economy would strengthen in the coming year, and the light blue line is how many people think it will weaken in the coming year. In 2015, we saw the most confidence yet. So if you go back then, that was when things were actually looking like it was on a very much an upward trend. At that stage, almost half of the people surveyed thought the economy was going to strengthen. And you can see there in the pink circle that I've highlighted, you can see that more people said that it would strengthen than stay the same in that particular year. Then as we got to the end of 2015 and asking people about their outlook for 2016, unfortunately, as we all know, confidence was pretty badly hit with the whole oil price change, and you can see that was very bad for employer optimism. The number saying that the economy would improve actually halved from one year to the next. Asking about the outlook for 2017, and you can see a slight improvement. The dark blue line, so the positive outlook people, has passed the 30% mark. So 1/3 of employers saying the economy will strengthen. Light blue line is back down below 20%, which is good news as well. So still nowhere near where it was at 2015, but it's absolutely ticking back in the right direction. So what's driving the change? Is it just one particular region, or is it all the regions, or different from province to province? So just looking at 4 of the provinces here, generally speaking, it's good news. You can see that in BC and Ontario, on the left-hand side, the dark blue line stayed above the light blue line for the last 3 years by some margin. There's daylight between them. So while confidence took a hit for 2016, it rebounded to some extent this year with an improvement. In BC in particular, that's over 40% of employers saying that the economy will strengthen. In Ontario, it's over 30% saying likewise. Looking at Alberta in the top right, there's a lot of change there over the last 3 years. You've got the well-documented change from boom to bust shown from 2015 to 2016. Last year, almost 40% of people in Alberta saying that the economy would weaken. This year, that's actually improved by 10 points, and it's now under 30% saying that it would continue to weaken. 20% saying it will improve, and that's up from 15% last year, so good news there as well. So it's an improvement there as people hope, I would say, that the worst is behind them and that the oil price will continue to recover. I think the news on the pipelines that Mr. Trudeau approved recently, that's sure to help confidence levels too, so hopefully they will actually happen. Having said that, Alberta is still the least optimistic of the provinces, and which is in stark contrast to where they used to be. And then finally, Quebec, some major changes here. Last year we saw a significant change for the worst, with people feeling the economy would strengthen, dropping from 40% to 20%, but this year it's a total bounce back to 40% again. So why this is so pronounced, I'm not really sure, to be completely frank. I wouldn't think that Quebec would respond to the Alberta changes more than the other provinces did. I do know actually that we had a far bigger participation in the survey from people in Quebec this year than in previous years, so maybe it was something to do with the sample size, but either way, the year looks very positive for Quebec, and it's actually very similar to BC. So overall, every region is showing an uptick in confidence. So that was all about the economy in general. How about what people are saying for their own businesses? So the question here is about business activity. The colours are the same as earlier, so dark blue means the business activity increased, and where it's striped, that was the prediction for that particular year. So let's start with what happened in 2016. So you can see that half of employers say that business activity increased, and that was up 3 points compared to 2015, and 27% say that it stayed the same. In the shaded bars, beside those kind of solid bars, I suppose, you can see what the expectation was for 2016, and it's actually very similar. So 57% expected an increase, 50% actually got an increase. How about for the year ahead? Well, over 60% of businesses saying that they expect increases next year. That's about 5-point increase on the same question last year, and approaching the kind of peak here, at least on this trend line, of 2014, when 60% experienced an increase in business activity levels. So let's see if we can get back to that level in 2017. either way, being able to say that 50% of companies saw an increase last year and over 60% expecting to see an increase in their own business this year is a pretty positive and confident story, I would say. So again, breaking this down by region, overall you can see quite a lot of confidence here. In BC, over 60% of companies saying businesses increased in 2016. That's up from 55% in 2015. And that's even higher than where they were back in 2014. Looking ahead, almost 70% expecting to see an improvement in 2017. So excellent all round for BC. In Ontario, 57% saying business increased in 16. That was up from 51% saying that the previous year, and almost 70% again feeling good about the coming year. Quebec, similarly, 55% saw improvements last year, and it's a steady improvement over the previous 2 years, and again, 70% expecting next year to be even better. So outside of Alberta, 70% would appear to be the norm of employers saying that they expect to see business activity levels increase. So on that point, let's focus on the outlier, Alberta, which is in the top right. And you can see there that 2015 was the impact year where we saw 50% of companies in Alberta said that they saw a slowdown. In 2016, this is good news, that's now only 25% saying things actually got worse, and over half saying that it was pretty steady going. And that really was in stark contrast, I think, to what people in Alberta expected. It wasn't quite as bad in 16 as what people expected. For the year ahead, in Alberta, it looks like a split decision. So you've got just over 40% saying that things will improve, and just under 40% saying it's steady as she goes. So based on this, things are significantly different in Alberta than elsewhere for sure, but it's absolutely improving very much from where they were. And the backdrop to all of this is obviously the oil and gas market. So let's see how much of an impact everybody feels this is actually having on their own business. So we asked, this is all employers, this isn't just oil and gas, it's saying all employers about how the oil and gas downturn is or has been affecting them. 38% of employers said that the downturn has affected their economic outlook in a negative way, which is a very significant proportion. And 38% also said that it negatively affected their own business activity. So whether that's the same 38% or not, I'm not really sure, but they probably overlap a lot, you would imagine. 58% of those affected were actually outside of Alberta. So while the worst of the downturn was obviously felt in Alberta, it certainly wasn't exclusively there. And breaking that down further, 30% of those affected were from Ontario and 20% from BC. Kind of the counter of this point, which industries do people feel are doing the best? So we asked what you felt would be the strongest performing sector for the coming year. Number one was banking, number two, the construction industry, number three, IT and telecommunications rounds out the top three. Public sector is in there in the top five, and it's unsurprisingly still very strong. Excuse me. We're seeing a lot more investment and promises of investment from liberal governments in the preferred provinces and federally. And then finally, you've got pharmaceutical companies or life science companies, which are amongst the most optimistic sectors. A lot of pharmaceutical companies saying that they plan on increasing business activity next year, at least that they expected they would. Okay, so summarize so far, we've got an improvement in general economic confidence in most places. Alberta is kind of stepping away from the precipice in particular. Businesses feeling more confident about their own personal business and then expecting it to improve for next year. So overall, it's a really good story. So what effect is all of this having on hiring? So let's have a look at that, and then later on we'll have a look at how all of it is actually going to affect plans for salary levels. All right, so we'll start with permanent hiring plans. 35% of people expected headcount to increase in 2016, and 15% said that it would decrease. When we asked them just very recently how 2016 actually turned out, 31% said that it had increased permanent staff levels, so very close to the expectation there. But far more than expected, 29% had to actually decrease headcount, which kind of stands to reason. Generally speaking, you don't go into a year hoping or expecting to decrease. You don't know what's going to happen until it happens. In 2017, you can see the expectations are similar, maybe a little bit more optimistic than last year. So if the outcomes are similar, we'll see a few more people growing or maintaining permanent headcount, but probably still about a quarter of employers decreasing. I think the really interesting thing here is the consistency. So for 4 years now, we've got the same percentage, i.e. 35% or thereabouts of employers adding permanent headcount, and that's amidst significant changes in economic confidence and changes on business activity levels. So you could say, why is this happening? You know, like whether the economy is improving or getting worse, whether activity is going up or down, doesn't seem to affect hiring plans that much. And I would say a couple of things would be influencing that. The first one is, when you think about it, really since 2008, we have not had a prolonged period of economic confidence growth or really stability. And if it isn't one thing going wrong, it's another. This time it's the oil price. The next time it could be NAFTA or some kind of Trump-inspired issue. But we believe that Canadian employers are cautious because of this lack of consistent stability or consistent growth. And secondly, and closely related to the first point, it's just good business decision-making, I would say, from Canadian business leaders. If things are looking up, it's an opportunity to improve productivity and profit margins. Plus, when things turn down a little bit, you haven't overinvested, so you don't need to make major cuts. So I think it's kind of a canny approach, if you would like, and I would say that it is working out quite well, that kind of conservative approach, particularly the way things are. I would say when we have a few years of consistent, steady growth, it would be interesting to see if hiring picks up. You would imagine that it would have to. It would be interesting to see what it'll take to get back over that 35% of companies planning on adding permanent headcount. Final point on permanent hiring, I would say, what the graph here doesn't talk about at all is that employers are targeting hiring on very specific skill sets. So that's what we see on a day-to-day basis. And I go so far to say that every single company is hiring for something right now. And by that I mean, you know, if there's something that you're looking for that's a hard skill set to find, so for example, if you're a construction company, if you find a senior estimator with 10 years experience and they're, say, very experienced in high-rise commercial experience here in Toronto, then you're probably going to hire that guy regardless of what's happening, as they're very hard people to find. And what we see across almost every industry is that every industry has that hard-to-find skill set or multiple skill sets, and if they come available, they will hire them. Regional trends, again, then, looks very similar, steady year on year, except Alberta, which isn't surprising. BC and Quebec are the most confident in increasing headcount, so while most employers in Ontario are expecting to hold steady. So going region by region, starting on the top left, BC is actually incredibly consistent and incredibly positive every year. So you've got 40% of companies every year saying they're adding more people. And even when the economic confidence took a little bit of a hit last year, it didn't really impact hiring at all. And for 17, they're saying it's looking more positive. In Alberta, on the top right, you can see that almost 50% of employers had to reduce permanent staff numbers. And that was worse than the previous year, which was 45%. So, you know, two very difficult and challenging years there. Looking ahead, most employers in Alberta are hoping to keep headcount steady. Whether that's what's going to happen or not should remain to be seen. But I would say, given the change in economic confidence in Alberta and their outlook on business activity, I'd say the worst is indeed behind them. Hopefully we're right. In the bottom left, you can see Ontario is planning to keep permanent headcount largely steady, and again following a pattern that has been remarkably consistent for the past 3 years. And for 2017, majority is saying they would like to hold steady. And finally, in Quebec, in the bottom right, they've seen a bit of a fluctuation in the last few years, and actually saw fewer companies decrease numbers last year compared to 2015. Looking ahead, they're almost as confident as BC, with half planning to increase permanent staff numbers. So again, reasonably encouraging news. Then just quickly looking at temporary hiring, the very high orange bar indicates that most employers expect to keep temp use consistent with last year. very few decreasing, and less than 1/5 increasing temporary or contract headcount. About 55%, it's a statistic not on the slide actually, 55% of employers say that they are using temporary workers, and that number has increased consistently over the last 5 years. And I would say that's due to business activity levels increasing bit by bit each year, but there's a general caution that we've mentioned already to overcommit with permanent hiring, and hiring temporary contract staff can alleviate the pressure. So more companies moving towards using temps, but those that do, planning on keeping the use at the same level, if that makes sense. Okay, on the skill shortage or talent mismatch, I think that topic gets it becomes topical and goes away again. And I think since the oil and gas downturn, it hasn't really been as much of a pressing issue in the media, at least. But for hiring managers looking to find specific skill sets, I think it's always top of mind. So we'll just have a quick look at that, see how people are feeling about the skill shortage. 58% say that Canada has a skill shortage, and 67% say that the skill shortage specifically affects their own industry. The numbers are actually a little bit lower than last year. 61% said there was a skill shortage last year, and 75% said that it affected them personally. And that's showing the impact of the oil and gas and Alberta downturn, because obviously that industry, that province, had the toughest hiring markets. We asked employers whether the downturn had actually affected their hiring, and 25% said that they've been able to hire faster due to the downturn. So there's positive news about that. Asked about the main reason for the shortage and how this has changed since last year. You can see on the bottom. So slightly more employers are blaming things like people not entering the industry, people locating or relocating, or just leaving the industry. We produced another report called the Hayes Global Skills Index. It looks at 30 countries around the world and how much pressure there is in the job market. And in that report, we highlighted the talent mismatch as a serious concern in Canada. Canada's got the people, but the people don't always have the skills. And the index recommendation included implementing more targeted training, improving mobility between industries, so kind of trying to break down some of the barriers to keep people from moving industries or changing functions within the same industry. Lack of training and development, though, and professional development really remains the biggest concern, and obviously investing in that would take a lot of input and cooperation between employers, industry groups, government, educational industries or institutions, but we'll look at that more in the next section. So in the short skills area, or the kind of skill short area, makes more sense, what are employers actually doing to attract talent? So we asked, what are you doing? And the number one answer was offering competitive salaries. And I think I've said this every year for I think 7 years now, which is you've got to be market competitive, but only one company can pay the most. So you have to be able to compete on other things, I would say. The least common attraction tools are promoting career progression and training and development, even though they're actually considered very important for recruitment and retention. In fact, when we asked what employers' main retention challenges are, they said the biggest challenge is being able to offer career progression, and that's followed by just how competitive the market is. So, for example, how do you keep others from poaching top talent, and salaries comes in third, and everything after that really drops off quite significantly. So they really are the top three things. So people are leaving jobs because they're not getting career progression. And the question is, are you doing enough to try and keep those people? 64% of people said that they don't have or they don't know if they have a succession plan. That's 1/3 of companies left who do. There's good news here. That's actually 10% more than had a succession plan last year. And then another 20% are saying that they're in the process of implementing. So for the first time, we've been asking that question for a long time now, for the first time there's a significant change in how many companies are tackling the issue of succession plans. So I think if you don't have one or you're not currently putting one in place, it's unlikely you're going to be able to answer that question and unlikely to be able to answer or provide the long-term career progression that people are looking for, particularly the high potential people, the guys that you probably most value, people who are making the biggest difference day to day. So it's definitely something to think about. on the question of how do you address less people entering the industry, we asked, what do you think the main reason is for fewer people entering your industry? And if you look at the kind of donut-shaped chart on the right, the biggest segments represent lack of awareness in university and college, the industry's perception, how the industry is perceived, or the stereotype you'd associate with the industry. So those are both kind of an issue of people not knowing about the industry or just having a misconception. If you combine the lack of awareness in university with the lack of awareness in grade school about an industry, then you've got more than a third of employers saying young people are just not learning about their industry at the stage of life when they might be starting to think about what kind of work they could be interested in doing at some point, which is a very good point. So what can be done about all of this? Well, we asked who is responsible for tackling the issue of too few people joining the industry, and most people went with this answer. 35% said that they felt that they themselves or companies in general are responsible for addressing this, but which is, it's promising. It's a lot of employers are saying this is our issue, we can't blame it on somebody else. And then you've got the remaining percentage kind of spread across government or responsible educational bodies, industry groups, but the most popular being it's up to companies themselves. So I think that really is an issue that is on the agenda, and I think people continue to struggle with it. Going back to our Global Skills Index again, one of the things that was flagged about Canada's system is that Canada's education system is seen to be quite inflexible compared to some other countries, meaning it isn't very good at adapting quickly to new skill demands. So this is an easy thing for me to say, but obviously government and educators have to combine their efforts and try and create more flexible programs. Employers and industry groups have to make sure they're communicating their needs with the educators and the government. So, like I said, easy to say, a very difficult thing to fix. All right, finally, so the key part of the guide. How is all of this affecting salaries? What are companies planning on doing with salaries this year? So on this graph here, we've got 5 years of salary trends. The dark blue bar represents the proportion of people that did not increase salaries. Orange is an increase, but less than 3%. And the light blue is an increase, so more than 3%. And the short version, I'll explain it, but the short version is really there's a trend towards a more conservative approach. And I could summarize the trends as saying there's more and more companies every year offering a 0 increase. There's more companies every year offering a less than 3% increase. And there's less companies each year offering a more than 3% increase, if that makes sense. Hopefully it does. So if we looked at the light blue bars, you can see that since 2013, it's gone down from more than 40% offering more than 3% in 2013 to just 27% last year, and the same saying that that's the plan for this year. So that's quite a change over the years. Then look at the dark blue bar. In 2013, 15% of companies said no increase this year, but by 2016, that had become a far more prevalent concept, with 25% saying no increase. The orange bar, that represents companies saying, yes, there will be an increase, but we're going to keep it below 3%. And that seems to be clearly the most common approach. And again, since 13, there's a trend towards that approach. You've got around 45% offering that in 2013, and that's risen to 55%, saying that's the plan for the coming year. So over the last 5 years, a lot more companies offering either no increase or less than 3%. When you think about the increases and decreases in confidence and in business activity levels, you kind of think, why is there such a clear trend, and is that at odds with what's happening in the economy and amongst businesses, and how come it isn't changing with the ups and downs? And I'd say it's really exactly for the same reason as we're not seeing a change in hiring. We haven't really seen multiple years of consistent economic growth across the country and across industries for, it's coming up to 10 years now, and people are cautious. I think it's as simple as that. The other angle actually is almost 20% of companies said that they were able to offer lower than usual compensation due to the economic downturn in the last couple of years. So that's reducing pressure to increase in some areas or some industries. But anyway, bad news for your pocket, I would say, from a personal point of view, but I'll put a positive spin on it and say that 81% say that they will increase salaries next year, albeit by a tiny amount, and also point out that less companies are planning a zero change for this year. So there you go, be positive. Okay, so the previous slide was about kind of the catch-all, i.e. plans that cover every employee. So we wanted to see if companies are taking like a two-speed approach to salaries, and we asked whether you're willing to change your compensation plans to attract top talent. So in the dark blue wedge of the top left, you can see there the 20% of employers say, yes, we have done that. And then you've got another 5% saying they plan to do so in the coming year, and another 38% saying they haven't done so but would be willing to do it. So that's a total of 64% saying they would, they have, or they're willing to change their salary plans to attract specific people. So very similar in the approach on hiring. Overall, conservative, but when it comes to specific skill sets, a very different and a lot more aggressive approach. Looking at the chart below, the grey and the blue kind of piece of that shows where people are feeling wage pressure. So you can see it's highest at the mid to senior level, which kind of makes sense. So overall, more than 60% are feeling at least some wage pressure at these levels, and almost as many saying they're experiencing it at director level and above. So I would predict that we'll see employers really targeting compensation increases to the people in the team who are the most important to them, and that makes sense. You know, so the 10% who were driving the results, or the people who are the future leaders in the company. Then we just wanted to see, are these plans for salary increases lining up with what people expect? 2/3 of people say that they expect to get a salary increase next year. That's kind of consistent with what it was last year. Last year it was 68% of people saying they expected an increase. But then we said, did you get an increase last year? And only just over half actually got a pay increase. So that expectation was not met. So there's what percentage? 17, 18% did not get the raise as expected. You know, from our point of view, and our advice would be, not everybody needs a pay rise every single year. But if you're not planning on increasing salaries, I would say you need to communicate with employees, especially why that is, and tell them in advance, just to try and avoid that lunch bag letdown, as they say. And maybe look at other areas of improvements that, you know, maybe you look at benefits this year, maybe you look at salary increases the following year. Which kind of leads us to benefits. So we talked a lot about targeted attraction. I think benefits packages is one of the best ways to stand out. So we asked employees what benefits are most valuable to them, and these are the top 5 in order. So number 1, vacation; number 2, performance bonuses; number 3, pension/RRSP support; 4, training and development; and 5, flexible work hours. And by the way, the top benefit is actually always vacation, and from our experience, and we surveyed this once, vacation is actually the only benefit that will make people accept a lower salary. I don't know if you knew that. Anyway, these represent the opportunities for you to stand out and to be able to offer candidates what they're actually looking for. So we wanted to say then, what proportion of companies are actually offering these things? So going through them, 56% of employers are offering more than 2 weeks to new hires on vacation time. Just over half of employers are offering bonuses. 52% offer pension or RRSP support. We've already talked about the importance of training and development. 47% of employers include that in their attraction package or benefits package. And finally, flexible work options, which 49% of employers have. So I would say all of these, or any of these, can be an opportunity, and if you can offer more of these, if you're doing one already, if you can get a second or third one, then you could well be doing a better job than your competitors, and it gives you something to sell. Then we wanted to see what are people planning on doing next year. So these are the benefits, or the most popular benefits, that employers are planning on adding in 2017. So they're relatively small in numbers, which kind of makes sense because most people, as you said, half of companies have these things in place already. 5% of employers plan to add flexible work options, for example. It does show that employers are looking for ways to differentiate, because there's a reasonable percentage here saying they're going to add these things. But what I think is most interesting is that the list here really does resemble the list above, i.e. what the employees are looking for. So I think employers know what they're trying to add and why it would be valuable. But there is one piece that is kind of notable by its absence. So the training and development support isn't in their top 5 things to add. It's actually not even in the top 10 of what employers plan to add next year. Less than 2% of employers saying they're adding this to attract or retain talent in the coming years. So if you're not training to develop skills in the company, if you're not training to address productivity issues, and you're not including training in your benefits as a recruitment and retention tool, then you're probably missing out on quite a significant opportunity, I would say. But it's easier said than done. I know that when companies talk about, developing a training and development program, it's an expensive exercise. It can be time-consuming. Can it be pointed to and say that specifically improved our retention? But it doesn't have to be as difficult, I think, as some companies might think. There's lots of ways of showing an investment or a commitment to training. You can bring in an external trainer for a half a day or a day and try and train a group, or just organizing lunch and learns within the organization, setting up internal mentorship programs, and just trying to pass the knowledge on to the next level and just formalizing that. Actually doesn't cost anything. You could offer time off for employees to be able to pursue work-related qualifications, and say you can have X time off to study for these things, which is a commitment. I know there's a cost to that, but maybe it's not a direct dollar cost. Could be an investment in membership for somebody, or investing in online training programs. So there's lots of different things that you can offer, no matter what the size of the company is or the budget. But you do need some kind of response to this if it's not on the agenda for you, I would say. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That just leaves me with summarize of the key findings and some recommendations at the end, which we've taken the liberty to add. So key findings. Number 1, the confidence in the economy is improving. Number 2, employers outside of Alberta are very optimistic for future business activity, and Alberta is hoping for an improvement. Number 3, employers are using contingent or temporary workers to manage workloads. Maybe they don't have the visibility on those resources at times. Number 4, skill shortages are top of employers' concerns regardless of what's happening in the greater economy. Most are focused on using compensation and benefits, traditional benefits I would say, to attract talent, and maybe not using some of the other ones. And then when it comes to salary increases, less than 3% continues to grow in popularity, but at the same time employers are targeting bigger increases to get and keep the best talent or the hardest skill sets to find. And then we've got kind of our top 5 recommendations that could well help you and your teams for the year. Number 1, targeted hiring. Being in the frame of mind that we're not hiring that might make total sense for the business, but similarly, you need to have a targeted hiring plan to find those people that will make the biggest difference. A key thing there is just kind of monitor the workloads on the key staff to make sure that you're not overburdening people whilst you hold out before hiring. Number 2, I would recommend taking a 2-speed approach for compensation reviews, as you saw earlier. Increases of like 1 to 2% would keep you competitive, I would say. But using targeted increases and investing a bit more on the 3 to 6% to retain the top performers would be a good idea. Adding training and seeing training as a benefit is a great idea. It helps you engage and retain high potential employees. Helps you grow your own experts, and obviously makes you a more attractive organization to join. If you're not sure what to expect from the year, i.e. hoping business activity will increase, maybe it does, you don't want to commit to perm hiring, I would say consider using temporary or contract resources, keep up with the changes, pick them up, drop them when you don't need them. And then finally, and we say this a lot, maintaining a talent pipeline even when you're not hiring is a good idea. Trying to develop your own employer brand online is a good idea. It's a long-term thing, so why not do it while you're quiet? Okay, that is it. So thanks very much for listening. I hope you found it useful and got a couple of good ideas for it. We have time. I went over there a little bit, but anyway, we have some time to answer some questions that you have, so you can just type it into the chat box and we'll do our best to try and answer them. But while we are waiting for that, just to give you a little bit of extra information, so you can request a copy now. We will release the online copy on January 16th. If you're extremely keen and want to get hold of a copy before that, we release the hard copy, I believe, in the first week back after the holidays. So you can request a copy and then we'll be in touch with you directly so we can deliver one. Outside of that, yeah, you'll be able to get an online copy from January 16th. For people who say, can we get a copy of the webinar? Yes, you can. It's being recorded. So you can just watch the slides. You can turn on the sound if you want to listen to me. And that will be on the Hayes Canada YouTube channel tomorrow. And I think that's pretty much it. So let's see if we do have any questions. Okay, we do have one. So that's from, okay, I've been told I can't raise salaries in the next fiscal year. What can I do to keep my team from looking elsewhere? Well, that is tough. Okay, you know, first of all, I'd hope that just because you didn't increase, you're not planning on increasing it this year, that everybody just doesn't walk out. Like, it depends on, maybe you increased it last year and the year before. Maybe there's an expectation that you have to increase it every year, which I think is a little bit dangerous, that maybe you don't want to get into that position because people get disappointed when it doesn't happen. But at the same time, the news being no salary increases for the coming year can be a little bit demotivating. So I would say the first thing would be to try and figure out why that is the case. Like, is there some kind of logical reason as to what's happening? Often people will change their minds. You know, they go, I'm hoping for a salary increase, but when they hear the industry is on a bit of a downturn and things aren't as good as it was, and suddenly people feel just happy that they're employed, and maybe their expectation for a salary increase goes away a little bit. So I would look at why there is no salary increase, and is it a logical thing that you can talk to your staff about and explain it. Often people will go, okay, that makes sense, that's fine. But then outside of that, you kind of do what I was mentioning there during the webinar. I'd say there's other things that you can do. You can add other benefits. Maybe this year is the time that you look at career planning and training and development, and next year you come back around to salary increases. Maybe this time is when you look at vacation, and next time around you do something else. So I would say there's lots of different things that you can do to engage people. One of the key things is just talking to them, I would say. Yeah. How do I, wondering if you can get a copy of the PowerPoint slides. So you can get a copy of the actual webinar, as I said, on YouTube, so you can see it there. So hopefully that will do the trick. I'm a petroleum engineer. Do you anticipate it being difficult for me to obtain a job in Alberta next year? It depends, I suppose. Like, maybe I'm not the right person to ask about it. You might, if you can send me an email, actually, whoever asked that question, send me an email. I'll put you in touch with Jim Fearon, who runs our business in Alberta. He's the oil and gas expert, and I'm sure he would be happy to talk to you. So drop me an email at rowan@hayes.com, and I'll pass that question on to Jim. Next question, how do I sell training to my senior leadership team when most say it's expensive and too much time away from people's desks? This is kind of weird, actually, because what we see is, and this comes from people, it's not just the management. Like, something I always think is funny is people want more training, but then when you're offering training, people say, oh, this is taking me away from my desk, and like, they're complaining that they have training. So I don't know how you can win on that one, but I think you have to have an answer. You have to be able to say, what are we doing specifically about training and development? And if you can't point to something that looks like a plan or a program or some form of commitment, it's not good enough. You know, you will get knocked out in competition there. Rachel?
Yeah, I think talent management's a big focus, and so training and development kind of fell by the wayside in favour of a more holistic talent management strategy. I think if you can share that with your employees and say, look, this is the track that you are and this is what you need to do to get there, then all of a sudden training isn't a burden anymore, and they do want it because they can see that it's part of the bigger talent management plan and it's going to get them to their goals quicker. So I think training for training's sake, lunch and learn for lunch and learn's sake, yes, that's going to be met with a negative response. People haven't got time, blah, blah, blah. If they can see it as part of this bigger structure that many companies are putting in place these days, it has a whole different feel to it. That ties into performance management, that ties into how much money you pay people, how much bonus you give them. So that full holistic talent management framework will make sure that that's a good thing. So it's
good.
For a reason.
Yeah, makes total sense. Next one, I know lots of people look for new jobs in January. How do I stand out to them? That sounds like an employer saying, how do I stand out to people who are looking for jobs, I think. Yeah, so like January is actually an exciting time because lots of people start looking for a new job. Lots of companies have got new budgets, so they start hiring. Typically, January, February, March for us is a very busy time of the year. So I would say from an employer point of view, being clear about, like we talk about this with our clients about a value proposition, and some people take it seriously, some people don't. Like, you have to be very clear as to what cards you can play, and are they genuine, are they compelling? The people that you're trying to attract care about these things that you're talking about. So you do have to know your audience, and you have to be honest with yourself and say, is this good? Is it better than what other people are offering? Is it worth talking about? And then how do you get it out there? Like, is it presented clearly on your website, in the ad that you present? When your hiring managers interview, do they talk about these things? Like, is there a consistent agreement across the company through the different channels that this is what you're trying to sell? And that's more work than you might think, but I think that's what the answer is. And then if you're looking for a new job and you're trying to say, how do I stand out from all the other people looking for a new job, the key really is, and there's work involved in this, but be clear about what you're applying to, and have you figured out whether you're a good match or not? And if you are, is it obvious from your resume that you match that specific job? Are you sending out 20 resumes all identical to 20 different jobs, or are you paying attention to what the job says and then matching what you have to that job and presenting yourself as such? I would suggest your resume should present the things that you have that the client or the employer is actually looking for. But anyway, so I do not have any more questions. Nothing else is coming through, so that's it. As I said, if you work in the construction industry, IT, if you're in accounting and finance, or property and real estate, we have 4 more webinars coming this week. So they are on our website, I believe, and you can check to see when they're scheduled. They're happening each day this week: Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe Friday as well, actually. So yeah, go and have a look. And outside of that, you can drop me an email if I can help you with anything, anytime. And I thank you very much for your time. All the best. Have good holidays, and best for the new year.
Hi.